Imagine setting sail into the unknown. No maps, no GPS, no modern technology, just you, the open sea, and a gut instinct sharpened by years of experience. For the ancient Vikings, this was their reality, and yet they became some of the most fearless navigators the world has ever seen. How did they do it? How did they cross treacherous waters and explore distant lands like Greenland, Iceland, and even North America, without a single map in hand? Stick with us as we dive into the astonishing secrets of Viking navigation, where the sea was both a mystery and a map. The Viking Age began in 793 AD with the infamous raid on the Lindisfarne Monastery in England, and lasted until 1066 AD when the last Viking king, Harald Hardrada, fell at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. But the Vikings were much more than ruthless raiders. They were explorers, traders, and settlers from Scandinavia, specifically Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Where does the word Viking come from? The term derives from the Old Norse Vikinger, which refers to a pirate or raider, but that's just one side of the story. To go Viking meant embarking on an expedition, whether for trade, exploration, or conquest. These people were driven by adventure, hunger for wealth, and the need to find fertile lands beyond their icy northern homelands. Their voyages took them as far west as North America, as far east as Constantinople, and as far south as North Africa. But why take such dangerous journeys? For the Vikings, the sea was not a barrier, it was a highway to opportunity. They sailed for many reasons: to trade, to raid, to explore new lands, and sometimes to escape political tensions or harsh living conditions back home. Their world revolved around the sea, and to survive it, they became masters of it. You've heard stories of Viking warriors and their battles, but the truth about the Vikings is far more fascinating and complex. Here are 5 amazing facts that will make you see them in a whole new light. First, they were the first Europeans to set foot in North America, 500 years before Columbus. In the early 11th century, Leif Erikson led an expedition that landed on the shores of modern-day Newfoundland, Canada. They called it Vinland, and evidence from Norse sagas and archaeology confirm that Vikings lived there temporarily, long before Columbus discovered the New World. Second, their ships were technological marvels. Viking longships were masterpieces of engineering, built for speed and versatility. With shallow hulls, these ships could navigate both open seas and shallow rivers, allowing Vikings to raid deep into inland Europe. They could also be quickly hauled ashore for land attacks or repairs. Third, Vikings were expert craftsmen and traders. Far from being just raiders, Vikings were skilled artisans and traders. They built complex trade networks that stretched from Europe to the Middle East and even Asia. They exchanged goods like furs, walrus ivory, and amber for silks, spices, and metals. Imagine Viking traders in exotic markets as far as Constantinople. Fourth, they practiced early forms of democracy. Viking societies were more democratic than you might think. They held assemblies called things, where free men gathered to make laws, settle disputes, and decide on major community decisions. These gatherings were precursors to parliamentary systems still in place today. And finally, they valued cleanliness and grooming. Contrary to the image of wild, unkempt barbarians, Vikings were actually meticulous about their appearance. Archaeological digs have uncovered combs, razors, and even tweezers in Viking graves. They bathed regularly, often more than their European neighbors, and were known for their cleanliness and hygiene. Now let's address some of the most persistent myths about the Vikings. You've probably heard a lot of these, but how much is fact and how much is fiction? Myth 1. Vikings wore horned helmets. Nope, Vikings never wore horned helmets. This image was created by costume designers in the 19th century for opera performances and has stuck ever since. In reality, Viking helmets were simple, practical, and hornless. Myth 2. They were bloodthirsty savages. Yes, some Vikings raided and plundered, but many others lived peaceful lives as farmers, traders, and craftsmen. Their societies had laws, art, and even poetry, some of which still survives today. Myth 3. They only raided and pillaged. While raiding was part of Viking culture, trade and exploration were just as important. In fact, many Viking settlements grew into thriving towns, where people from different cultures met to exchange goods and ideas. Myth 4. They were uneducated. The Vikings had their own written language known as runes, which they used to inscribe stones and monuments, documenting everything from great battles to personal stories. Myth 5. They were a united people. The idea of a united Viking empire is a myth. Vikings were not a single group but came from different Scandinavian tribes, each with their own rulers and customs. Often they fought against each other as much as they raided foreign lands. Now comes the burning question. How did the Vikings, with no compasses and no maps, cross thousands of miles of open ocean without getting lost? The answer lies in their incredible knowledge of nature and the tools they crafted from it. First, sun compasses and sunstones. During the day, Vikings used sun compasses to track the position of the sun and estimate their direction. On cloudy days, they may have used sunstones, crystals like Iceland's spar, that could detect polarized light from the sun, even when it was obscured by clouds. Second, reading the stars. At night, they relied on the stars, particularly the North Star, to guide their way. Their understanding of constellations was vital to navigating through the dark and uncertain waters. Third, birds and sea creatures. When approaching land, Vikings observed the flight patterns of birds like ravens and seagulls. These birds wouldn't stray too far from shore, and by releasing them from the ship, Vikings could follow their flight path to the nearest land. Fourth, ocean currents and wave patterns. The Vikings were also masters at reading ocean swells and currents. By feeling the subtle differences in how waves moved, they could tell when land was nearby or how far they were from shore. And fifth, landmarks and memory. When near coasts, Vikings relied on their memory of landmarks, mountain ranges, islands, and fjords, to confirm their location. Experienced captains memorized routes down to the smallest detail. These ancient mariners could sail thousands of miles using their instincts and observations of the natural world, a skill that modern technology often overshadows. Yet, in their time, the Vikings' ability to navigate without maps was nothing short of revolutionary. The Vikings' mastery of navigation left an enduring legacy. Their exploration opened up new trade routes and cultural exchanges between the East and West. Some of their navigational methods, like using the sun and stars, are still taught in naval schools as backup techniques if modern technology fails. More importantly, their daring spirit of exploration paved the way for future generations of explorers who crossed oceans and connected the world. The Vikings' voyages of discovery didn't just shape their era, they continue to inspire us today. So what do you think? Could you have sailed the high seas like the Vikings, using nothing but the sun, stars, and the natural world around you? Share your thoughts and any Viking facts you know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the ancient world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on our next adventure, where history comes alive.